So I get asked this question a lot, and I did already respond in the comments, but I might as well do a video. So, one thing to note is that I've always been on the heavy side. Even pre-feeding tube, I was heavier. At my heaviest, I was about 347 pounds. It's been the heaviest I've ever been. Which is 2 pounds heavier than I was when I was first put on the feeding tube. I will not lie. But basically, what happened was in about I want to say, like, as far back as I can remember, I would go through bouts where I wouldn't be able to eat for a few days. I would be throwing up everything I intook, and just severe nausea and pain. And it would go on for a few days, so I would stop eating. Usually I'd drink, like, Ensure or something like that, or just eat, like, soups and, like, stuff like that for a few days. Then I'd feel better and I'd go back to eating how I would normally eat. I will admit, from the time that I moved out of home until I moved in with my aunt, which was 2009, 2008. I think it was 2009 I moved out of home. I can't remember for sure. But 2009 at least, it was either 2008 or 2009 until 2011, I lived with an ex, a now ex. And we ate a lot of takeout. A lot of takeout. He didn't cook, really. I don't know if he just didn't know how or he just didn't want to. And I was never allowed back in the kitchen after I attempted to make breakfast one day and the fire department got called because I was a moron and cooking bacon on high, trying to get it done fast, not knowing you're not supposed to cook bacon on high. Then I moved in with my aunt and she did all the cooking and I started to lose weight. I had to walk everywhere in town, didn't have a vehicle. I mean, the town was, drive through it in less than 5 minutes, but anywhere I wanted to go in town, I had to walk. I was always doing good. Wasn't thin by any means, but I was doing better. A couple years later, or like a year later, I moved in with my grandparents, lived with them, same idea. Grandma did all the cooking. I did have a vehicle again, especially because they lived in literally the middle of nowhere. There's like 5 houses on their street. They live in the county. There's nowhere to go unless you drive. But still, with Grandma doing all the cooking, and I was working and stuff like that, working in daycares. Again, I was staying pretty steady around, 220-ish mark, 230-ish mark. I honestly can't remember how much I weighed. I'd have to go way back in my photos, see if I could find them, because there's a few times I've tried this whole weight loss journey, and so I know I've got it tracked, but that's neither here nor there. 2013, me and my now ex-husband moved to where we live now, to where I live now. We moved in with his parents for a short time. They did all the cooking. Again, having to walk a lot, having to take the city bus a lot, didn't drive. I was definitely heavier than I had been at one point, but still nowhere close to where I am today. It was June or July of 2013, my now ex and I moved into our first place together. And again, this is when things really started to go downhill for my weight. We didn't do a lot of home cooking. What we did cook at home was a lot of prepackaged food, not great for you food, not very many vegetables, stuff like that. And a lot of takeout. I started working call center gigs, which is a lot of sedentary work, not really moving much. So between piss poor eating habits, not exercising or really doing much moving around, the weight just started gaining. 2018 was the first time I can remember going to the hospital for my vomiting spells, where, again, continuing like how it had happened to me, I'd go through spells of not being able to eat because of severe nausea and vomiting and everything like that. I chalked that up to acid reflux. It's just acid reflux. If I go off solid foods for a few days, I'll be fine. And I continued to do that for a while. By 2021, it had gotten the most severe it had been. I had spent like 3 months of doing just onshore and soups and bland diet. But still, not really exercising, not really being any active, just not doing what I should be doing. So I ended up in the hospital and was in and out of the hospital a bunch of times. And then finally, end of June 2021, I'm in a semi-private room. They've run tests on me. They can't find anything wrong. Dietitian happens to walk in to see the gentleman who happened to be in the bed next to me, but in the second bed. The reason why I explicitly say second bed is because it's essential to know that, meaning the dietitian had to pass by my bed to get to his bed. Because how our hospital rooms, 99% of them are laid out. If it's a semi-private, the beds are side by side, not across from each other. Bed 1 is as soon as you walk in, bed 2 is at the window. So when she walked in, she seen on my tray, because they kept sending me food, they kept wanting me to eat. She seen our hospital has these little cups of juice. See if I can find a picture. Essentially, this is what our juice cups look like. They're probably a little bit different, probably not the same brand, but that's essentially what they look like. So I had a whole bunch of those stacked like pyramid on my tray, and she's like, "Oh, you don't drink a lot of juice?" And I said, "I can't." And then I told her what's going on. I'm like, "It takes me all day to drink just one of these," because at that time it did. And I said, "I have a whole drawer for it," and I opened up my bedside table drawer, and it was just filled to the top with more juices. She's like, "Well, what are they doing for you?" I said, "Nothing. They said they can't find anything wrong, so they're just trying to get me back on solid foods and then sending me home." And so she's like, "I have to see this patient. Hang on." She goes, deals with that patient. She goes back, asks my name. She goes, and look, they never sent a referral to her. That pissed her off. I didn't understand. She said, because it's nutrition issues going on, there should have been a referral put through to her right away. So I don't know exactly what got said, what got done after that conversation. I told her everything that I'd been going through. Next thing I know, I get told I'm being put on an NG tube. So at first, the tube they put in was very thick. Like, honestly, this is the tubing to my feed pump, but it was like 3 or 4 times as thick. It was like yay big. It's probably thicker than a straw. Maybe 2 straws side by side, right? Like, it was a really big tube. Come to later find out that it was actually a drainage tube, not a feeding tube. But this hospital was not equipped for proper feeding tubes, or rather not equipped, but not very well knowledged on proper feeding tubes. So, had that in, couldn't sleep for a couple days with it in, because I have to use a CPAP machine, and because of this great big hose, my CPAP machine could not fit, my mask couldn't fit properly, everything like that. So it was a terrible couple of days. And literally just a couple of days, like a day, maybe 2, before one of the nurses went to give me medication through the tube and clogged the tube. They did everything they could. They couldn't get the tube unclogged. So we had to pull the tube. So then I went another day or 2, I don't remember, with nothing, sipping on the broth they'd bring me, sipping on juices. Again, barely being able to intake anything at this point. So I did lose like 10 or 20 pounds when I was in the hospital. I can't remember because I was in for like a month and a half. And I eventually got sent home on a feeding tube. It was a nasal tube and went into my stomach. I was sent home on Longevity 1.5 formula. That was the very first formula I ever tried. For the first few months, I'd say 2, 3, maybe 4 months, I was purely tube fed only. That was it. That was all. I could not tolerate anything else. However, I continued to have spouts of vomiting and nausea. So I went back to the hospital, of course, and what they ended up doing was, I believe it was August at this point. So it had only been a month since I had the nasal tube. They did a surgical tube. They called it a J tube. I later found out it would be called like a TJ tube, I think they said. So it was like it went through my stomach and into my intestines instead of just directly into my intestines. I also later found out that this tube was not a proper feeding tube. Once again, this was a Foley catheter. They're used in emergency situations only and generally just to hold the stoma open. But they are not meant for long-term tube use. So everything was going fine with my formula feeding. In some regards, I was not tolerating it very well, so I've been through a lot. There's a list of formulas that are covered in Ontario. I have that linked in the link tree, which is posted in my bio, if you would like to check it out. I am now on the formula you see in the video, which is Keto V formula. It is very high in calories because it is a 4-to-1 ratio. Unfortunately, though, it is the last formula that is covered that I could try. All the other formulas either contain cow's milk protein or amino acid-based proteins. I've been diagnosed with an allergy to cow's milk protein and an intolerance to the amino acid-based proteins. So this was my last chance. This is my last choice on formulas because it's plant-based. And I've been on this now for a couple of months, off and on. 1 month completely solid now. And it's been helping a lot in terms of I'm able to tolerate it. So fast forward to, I believe it was December 2021, when I was referred to a hospital in another city, who then did a proper feeding tube, and the style of feeding tube I have today, which is an actual GJ tube. So this is what it looks like. It is a dangler. The hospital I go to does not do buttons. They do not carry buttons because most of their patients, I guess, couldn't utilize a button, or I'm not sure. I was just told that they do not carry buttons. If I want a button tube, they are more than happy to place the tube for me still, but I have to purchase it out of pocket, and that is way too expensive. The one that my supply store carries is like, I can't remember, but it's pretty expensive. So this is the only low profile or button tube that my supply store carries. That is a GJ tube. All the others are only G tubes. And I need to have the G and the J. That's the price for one. Keep in mind, I only get $500 quarterly to buy everything that I need to last for 3 months for my feeding tube. That is double, and then some, my quarterly budget. And my tube gets replaced every month. Now, for most, the tube gets replaced every 3 months. They switched me to monthly because there was an issue for a while where my balloon, that little thingy there, that's on the inside to keep the tube in place, kept deflating, or losing water, or we're not sure. And so by week 5, my tube was popping out because the balloon wasn't full enough. And they tell you, unless it's an emergency, do not touch that balloon port. I do have access to it where I can check the water level. I can, put more if I have to, take some out if I have to, whatever. But you're told, do not touch unless it's like an absolute emergency, like the tube's coming out, you push it in, you fill the balloon kind of deal, right? To get it to stay until you get to the hospital. But you're not to touch it. So that's why I have to go every 4 weeks, because for some reason the balloons were deflating. Now, we don't know if that's still going on. Everything's been fine, but doctors don't want to touch the schedule right now. So I'd have to pay almost $1,200 monthly. That's not happening, so I'll stick with the dangler. So I've had this style tube since 2021. Now, I have not been purely tube fed since 2021. There have been bouts of times when I've been able to eat food. I have admitted this time and time again. When I've eaten, I went back to my old habits. So, poor food choices, cheap food choices, lots of junk food, lots of takeout, nothing for me to sit down and polish a medium pizza to myself. Like, it was bad. And the scale just kept going up. Of course, this also affects me in ways that, like, I have diabetes, so my sugars were very poorly managed. I've been on an insulin pump since April, and that has helped to make my sugars regular. And of course, now that I've been on the feeding tube, and only the feeding tube, since October 13th, my sugars are very well managed now. So all of this long-winded way to say that, yes, I have been on a feeding tube since 2021. Yes, I have as well eaten at times. And when I ate, it was very poor choices. And I've always been a larger woman. So my current weight is 334. I have a long-ass way to go. I've put myself back on the tube for a few reasons. One, controlled calories. I know, without even having to calculate it, without having to track it, I know what my intake is during the day. I get 1,250 calories a day. As well as I know that I've been in a flare-up. My stomach has been very upset. A lot of dry heaving because there's nothing in my stomach. A lot of throwing up acid, foam, stuff like that. So I'd have to be on the tube anyways, because right now trying to eat food would be a very bad idea. I made very poor life choices. I am now 36 years old, and I am trying to make better choices. I am trying to get up each and every day and do some sort of movement. Even if I only get 5, 10, 15 minutes in a day, that's better than my used to get nothing a day. I would sit on my butt all day long. I'm trying to get better because, well, for myself, I want nothing more than to be able to be healthy and go out and do things. Like, I dislike when I go out that I have to use a wheelchair if I'm going shopping. I dislike that when I go to doctor's offices and whatnot, depending how much walking is expected, that I have to use my wheelchair. I hate that I miss out on doing certain things because they're not accessible. And all over, I don't like being lazy. I'm tired all the time. I could sleep all day and all night. And what kind of life is that? I may not have any kids, but I do have a dog. I want to be able to take care of my dog all on my own with no outside support. In the future, if I get another dog, I want to be able to take care of that dog. Whatever my future holds, I want to have a future. I'm tired of having to shop at specialty stores for my clothes. I'm tired of, even when I do get clothes, they still look like crap on me because I don't look good in anything because I've gotten to a point in my life where I am so big. I don't want to be this size. And I am doing what I can to make myself better. It is a long road. It is a hard road. Going from binge eating and just eating whatever, whenever, all day, to being strictly tube fed, it's a big change. It's a drastic change. And it's not an easy change. But this is my story. This is my truth. And I just have to try and get better. So, this is my medical journey.